June 6, 1944, marks a pivotal moment in history. The Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France, codenamed Operation Overlord. While the bravery of soldiers and the strategic brilliance of military leaders are well documented, a lesser-known group of experts played a crucial role in the success of the Normandy landings: geologists. In this presentation, we will explore the vital contributions of geologists in planning Operation Overlord and how their knowledge of the terrain helped shape the course of the war. From analyzing soil conditions to identifying suitable landing sites, geologists provided critical insights that informed military decisions and ultimately saved countless lives. Operation Overlord was the name assigned to the establishment of a large-scale occupation of Northwest Europe. The first phase, the amphibious invasion and associated activities until June 30th, D-Day plus 24, to establish a secure foothold in Normandy. I want to make clear that this talk is not a history lesson on D-Day. I am limiting my comments strictly to the geological implications of the planning of the D-Day landings. There were many other people involved in the planning besides the ones I have highlighted. This is a very large subject, and I am also limiting myself to the major points of interest within this story. Also, the story is not well known since it was highly classified and the information was released 50 years after the war. The main branches of geology utilized for the preparation of the Operation Overlord were mineralogy, petrology, sedimentology, hydrogeology, and oceanography. History of military geology. Geology has supported military activities at least since the time of Napoleon. Napoleon included a geologist in his military campaign in Egypt to study the country's natural resources and geography. Despite all of this, Napoleon's Egyptian campaign was a military and political failure. Déodat de Dolomieu, the main geologist, played a significant role. He was part of the group of scholars and scientists known as the savants who accompanied the military expedition. Dolomieu's primary tasks included studying the Earth's secrets. He delved into the geological formations of Egypt, uncovering the mineral resources and rock structures that shaped this ancient land. Mapping the unknown. With a keen eye, Dolomieu meticulously mapped the terrain, aiding military operations and enhancing the understanding of the landscape. Collecting treasures. His quest for knowledge led him to collect and document various geological specimens. These samples would later enrich scientific studies back in France. Let's explore the massive planning and difficult tasks involved in the D-Day invasion, focusing on a surprising area: geology. You might not think geology played a big role, but I'm here to show you why it was actually crucial. What did military geology focus on? Military geology became all about terrain intelligence. Analyzing the terrain to understand how troops and vehicles could move was absolutely essential. Knowing the type of ground on the Normandy beaches was very important. The geologists needed to know if tanks and other vehicles could drive on them, if the landing craft would be stable, and if they could even build artificial harbors. Second primary geological area of investigation: locating access routes and finding staging areas and sites for construction materials. Third primary geological area of investigation: analyzing slope stability and rock excavation characteristics. The fourth geologic area of investigation was the provision of water supplies for the troops, the effects of modern warfare on the landscape. Bombs actually shattered bedrock and created bizarre landscapes. Artillery shells could blast craters up to 30 feet wide and many feet deep. Landmines were even more powerful, creating holes up to 160 feet deep. Shown in the picture is the dimpled landscape of modern-day Verdun after World War I. The history of the U.S. Military Geology Unit. United States Geological Survey, USGS, was established in 1879. The Military Geology Unit was established on June 24, 1942, 6 months after Pearl Harbor. The USGS continued to operate a military geology unit through 1975. After 1976, it was continued by the Department of Defense and some USGS departments. Turning to the British Geological Survey. In contrast, the British had a jump start on the subject of geology, with James Hutton, known as the father of modern geology, and William Smith, also known as the father of English geology, were both pivotal scientists that recognized the field of geology in Britain. The Ordnance Geological Survey, founded in 1835, was established to support Britain's industrial, military, and scientific needs during a period of rapid industrialization. It provided crucial geological information for infrastructure development, such as roads and railways, and systematically mapped coal and mineral resources to fuel economic growth. The Ordnance Geological Survey. In 1984, it was renamed the British Geological Survey. In contrast to the United States, Britain employed only a few military geologists, preferring to use civilians. British geologists participated for more than a year in the planning of Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of northwest France. Following D-Day on June 6, 1944, they contributed to the subsequent 11-month operational phase in Western Europe, including the initial 3-month battle for Normandy. The majority of geological work for D-Day was done by the British. U.S. teams concentrated on other areas, especially in the Pacific. German planning for Operation Sea Lion. The map shown indicates the German Operation Sea Lion landing strategy into England from the Normandy coast. Operation Sea Lion, the proposed invasion of England along the Kent and Sussex coast, scheduled for July 1940, was postponed several times later in the year and was eventually canceled. The German Army developed the largest organization of earth scientists in wartime to contribute to military applications. Sea Lion was planned to be the greatest amphibious assault in history. In the picture, Reich Marshal Hermann Goering and other German officers gaze across the English Channel. Hitler contemplated a sea invasion designed to bring England to her knees in the Operation Sea Lion. On the other side of the English Channel, we see Winston Churchill watching the activity in the English Channel from an observation post at Dover Castle in August 1940. The proposed German invasion of Britain, Operation Sea Lion, hinged on a crucial condition: the establishment of air supremacy. The Battle of Britain, however, proved a decisive setback for the Luftwaffe. Their failure to neutralize the RAF effectively precluded any realistic chance of a successful landing, forcing the cancellation of the invasion. The Kriegsmarine, despite its ambitions, lacked the naval prowess to effectively challenge the Royal Navy's supremacy in the English Channel. The overwhelming strength and strategic dominance of the British fleet ensured their control over these crucial waters, highlighting the disparity between the two naval forces. Adolf Hitler made the pivotal decision to prioritize Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, over an invasion of Britain. This strategic shift in focus resulted in the indefinite postponement and eventual cancellation of Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain. These combined factors underscored the changing dynamics and strategic priorities of Germany during the war. Allied Dry Run. The Dieppe Raid, August 19, 1942. By 1942, France had already been under German occupation for over 2 years. The Allied forces initiated their efforts with a contingent of 6,000 infantrymen, but the situation quickly deteriorated. compelling commanders to order a retreat. Within a mere 10 hours, over 60% of the soldiers who had landed on the beaches were either killed, wounded, or captured, leading to a catastrophic outcome. The Dieppe raid, also known as Operation Jubilee, was planned by Admiral Louis Mountbatten, who was the Chief of Combined Operations at the time. The operation was intended to test the feasibility of a large-scale amphibious assault on a heavily fortified coast and to gather intelligence. They realized that more planning and more study was needed, especially the terrain. For D-Day, comprehensive geological studies were essential. Key considerations included the selection of suitable sites for temporary airfields and quarries for road-building materials, the development of potable water supplies, and understanding the characteristics of both the seafloor and riverbeds. Additionally, Operation Pluto, pipelines under the ocean, was a crucial element, aiming to ensure a reliable petrol supply line across the English Channel. In preparing for D-Day, secondary geological studies were pivotal. Key considerations included understanding how the ground would respond to aerial bombardment and assessing the terrain's suitability for vehicular movement cross-country. These factors were crucial in ensuring the success of the landings and subsequent operations. In January 1943, Roosevelt and Churchill met at the Casablanca Conference. While the focus wasn't solely on the Normandy invasion, their decisions were crucial. The unconditional surrender declaration and the prioritization of the Mediterranean campaign provided vital combat experience and diverted German forces. This delay allowed for better planning and resource buildup for Operation Overlord. It also set the stage for Eisenhower to become Supreme Commander, essential for D-Day's success. Essentially, the conference laid the groundwork for the Normandy invasion. Operation Overlord, finding a suitable landing area for the invasion. Pas de Calais was the shortest sea crossing and had the shortest flying time, but it was heavily defended. On the other hand, Normandy wasn't as heavily defended. It was sheltered by the Cotentin Peninsula from the harsh Atlantic weather and had the port of Cherbourg nearby. Why were the Normandy beaches chosen? The Normandy beaches were chosen for Operation Overlord because they were close to England, had suitable landing sites, and offered natural cover against enemy fire. This location also surprised the Germans, diverting their attention from the heavily defended Pas de Calais. Additionally, the nearby port of Cherbourg was crucial for supply lines. Omaha Beach experiences 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day due to its semi-diurnal tidal cycle, which is typical for the Normandy coastline. On Omaha Beach during spring tides, the low and high tide variations are 20 to 23 feet, or 6 to 7 meters. During neap tides, the difference between high and low tide is smaller. The range is closer to 10 to 13 feet, or 3 to 4 meters. This variation in tides played a crucial role during the D-Day landings in World War II, as the timing of the tide affected the ability of landing craft to navigate obstacles and reach the shore. W.B.R. King, the head British military geologist until his retirement in 1943, is pictured here. He was basically the been-there-done-it man. He was professor of geology, University of London, then Cambridge, Lieutenant Colonel, Royal Engineers. He had World War I experience as a hydrologist and sent to France to assist the chief engineer to establish potable water supplies from boreholes. He was the most senior of the military geologists at the start of World War II, retired 1943, but continued in an advisory capacity. His major contribution eliminating a huge portion of the Normandy coast from consideration. The geological map of Normandy using King's analysis is shown with the Calvados Plateau area highlighted and chosen for the Normandy invasion. William King, made a crucial contribution to the Normandy landings by using his expertise to assess potential landing sites. His key achievement was identifying the Calvados coast as superior to the Cotentin Peninsula, effectively eliminating a large portion of the Normandy coast from consideration. The Cotentin Peninsula, shown in red, consisted of older hard rock terrain. This type of terrain is undesirable as a landing site because it is hard to maneuver troops and vehicles on hard rock surfaces. The general geology of the beach areas was judged suitable. This flat and dry terrain was a suitable surface to build airfields and to ensure the fast transport of troops by the British and U.S. Air Force. King's analysis zeroed in on several key factors. The Calvados terrain was ideal for quick airfield construction, which was crucial for air support and supply lines. The beaches were good for landing craft due to their gradient and sediment, and the area had a reliable freshwater supply. By emphasizing these advantages, King's geological assessment played a significant role in determining the D-Day landing zones. His work exemplifies how specialized knowledge in fields like geology can profoundly impact the success of complex military operations. How were the exact beaches chosen for the invasion? A team of geoscientists was assembled, and its leader and the driving force was Fred Schotten, a geologist. He became the senior military geologist in 1943 after W.B.R. King's retirement. He was an expert on Quaternary and Pleistocene geology. He was a professor of geology. Birmingham University attained the rank of major in the Royal Engineers. And he was later awarded an MBE in recognition of his military geological work. Bigot was a code word within a code word, a security classification beyond top secret. They chose the odd code word bigot by reversing the letters of two words, to gib, that had been stamped on the papers of officers going to Gibraltar for the invasion of North Africa in November 1942. The greatest protection had to be given to any document or map that even hinted at the time and place of D-Day. Bigot was chosen. Have you heard about the Bigot operations at London Selfridge's department store during World War II? In preparation for the massive Operation Overlord, they created these top-secret Bigot maps and documents in complete isolation. The workers involved were like secret agents themselves, sneaking in through back doors. Most of them had no idea what the full picture looked like. They just knew they were delivering together crucial bits of information that were vital for the war effort. Bigot was one of the top secret methods used to study the geology of the Normandy beaches. Bigot project was so restricted that when King George visited a command ship and asked what was beyond a curtained compartment, he was politely turned away because, as an officer later said, nobody told me he was a bigot. Let's talk about the heroic French resistance and their vital role in the Normandy beaches assault during World War II. These brave fighters supplied crucial intel on beach obstacles, fortifications, and other key elements. Their efforts were like a lifeline, ensuring the Allied forces had the upper hand when storming those beaches. Imagine in 1943, through the BBC, the British government kick-started a genius operation to gather crucial geological data of the Normandy beaches. They called upon everyday Britons to send in their postcards and photographs of France. The British appeal requested images from all over France to avoid raising any suspicion, but they were particularly keen on coastal beach pictures. These images helped them gather critical details such as the slope of the beaches, the degree of woodlands, and other geographical features essential for planning the Normandy invasion. In the end, an astonishing 10 million pictures and postcards were collected, each playing a part in one of the most significant military operations in history. Quite a clever strategy, don't you think? The success of the Allied invasion of Normandy in 1944 hinged not only on military strategy but also on a thorough understanding of the local geotechnical environment. Beach trafficability, or the ability of the terrain to support military vehicles and personnel, became a critical factor in planning the landings. Inadequate bearing capacity of the beach sand posed a significant risk. Soil failure could strand vehicles, exposing troops to enemy fire and potentially hindering the advance of critical supplies. The presence of boggy peat fields beneath the surface, concealed by a thin layer of sand, presented a particular challenge. Such terrain would be unable to support the weight of heavy tanks and armored vehicles, jeopardizing the success of the invasion. Beach sand simulation studies were carried out in Brancaster, England, because it was thought that this location was similar to the geological conditions of the Normandy beaches. Before the thunder of D-Day, a quiet drama unfolded on the beaches of Brancaster, Norfolk. Geologist Fred Shotton, tasked with ensuring the Normandy landings weren't a logistical catastrophe, turned this tranquil coastline into a top-secret laboratory. Shotton wasn't just studying sand, he was deciphering its secrets. Could it bear the weight of tanks? Would it crumble under bombardment? His experiments were audacious. Bombing runs simulated the chaos of battle, creating shell craters for testing vehicle maneuverability. This wasn't mere field work, it was applied geophysics at its most crucial. Shotton's meticulous analysis, sand compaction, bearing capacity, and trafficability provided the Allies with invaluable intelligence. His work ensured that when the ramps dropped on D-Day, the Allied forces wouldn't be bogged down in a sandy quagmire, proving that sometimes victory lies in understanding the ground beneath your feet. It is interesting to note that important data was also derived from race car driver Sir Malcolm Campbell. Campbell determined that the minimum depth of sand that analysts were seeking to confirm was 14 inches, 36 centimeters. Campbell was a British racing driver who held the world land speed record during the 1920s and 1930s. He was viewed as the leading authority on such matters. His expertise included racing locations such as Daytona Beach and the Bonneville Salt Flats. Operation Overlord wasn't just a feat of arms, it was a triumph of meticulous planning, much of it hinging on the work of a clandestine unit known as the Combined Operations Pilotage Parties, COPP. These specialists, a blend of expert navigators and resourceful commandos with geological expertise, undertook covert beach reconnaissance missions vital to the Allied landings. Under the cover of darkness, COP teams would infiltrate enemy-held coastlines, meticulously surveying potential landing sites. They were analyzing the very composition of the beaches, the gradient, the sand's consistency, its suitability for landing craft. This was applied geology at its most critical, informing decisions that would determine the fate of the invasion. The COP's contributions extended beyond mere reconnaissance. The detailed charts and intelligence they compiled, information on tides, currents, and underwater obstacles, became essential tools for the naval personnel tasked with guiding the vast invasion fleet. The COP's work, often shrouded in secrecy, remained largely unheralded for decades. Yet their meticulous surveying and analysis formed the bedrock of Operation Overlord's success, proving that sometimes victory is won not with grand gestures, but with the quiet precision of well-charted maps. The Combined Operations Pilotage Parties, COP, were highly trained teams of British Royal Navy, Marines, and Army personnel who conducted clandestine reconnaissance missions, often under the cover of darkness. Pictured here are Lieutenant Commander Nigel Clogstown Wilmot, British Royal Navy, father of COP, Major Logan Scott Bowden, Royal Engineers, British Royal Navy, and Sergeant Bruce Ogden Smith, Commando, British Royal Navy. They and their teams gathered crucial intelligence on beach gradients, obstacles, defenses, and tidal conditions. This vital information was then used to plan and execute successful landings, including those at Sicily and Normandy. Before the storming of Normandy, a quiet war was waged on its beaches. The Combined Operations Pilotage Parties, COP, tasked with secretly mapping landing sites, used canoes and augers to collect vital sediment samples. Their mission? To extract sediment samples using augers, essentially giant corkscrews, to assess the beach's composition. One abandoned auger in 1943 nearly exposed the entire operation. The audacious solution? Blanket all potential landing beaches with augers dropped by the RAF. The catch? Britain didn't have enough augers. This near disaster reveals how even monumental operations can hinge on the smallest, most unexpected details. An interesting story of Donald McColville, Royal Engineers, pictured here. His duty was collecting soil samples from beaches along the French coast. He spoke of having to make his way to shore unaided and having never previously swam. Talk about intelligence work. The British were facing a huge challenge: how to land heavy tanks on the Normandy beaches without them getting bogged down. One of their solutions? Analyzing photographs. See, the Germans were dragging massive tank traps across the beaches using local tractors. Unbeknownst to them, those tracks were a goldmine of information. By carefully studying the photos, British analysts could help determine the ground's load-bearing capacity. They even figured out how to estimate the sand's depth by looking at the wheel ruts of other German vehicles. Brilliant. Fred Schotten, pictured here, told the tale of his excursions in a modified de Havilland Mosquito aircraft over occupied France. He was able to lie on the base of the fuselage, observing the beaches through a specially fitted glass panel. Aerial photographs of the shores of Normandy were studied to find suitable landing sites for the invasion. The success of Operation Overlord hinged on knowing the enemy's beaches intimately. But how do you scout a battlefield without giving away your plans? The Allies' answer: strategic aerial reconnaissance. They photographed numerous beaches, creating a mosaic of potential landing zones. The real genius, however, lay in how they processed those images. A top-secret collaboration between the USGS and Bausch and Lomb produced the multiplex, a device that could convert aerial photos into precise topographic maps. Think of it. From flat images to detailed terrain models revealing slopes, obstacles, and the very makeup of the beaches. This technological leap was essential for planning every aspect of the landings. Spitfire's photo reconnaissance proved invaluable for photo reconnaissance. Spitfires had their armament and radios removed and replaced with extra fuel and cameras. This led to the development of the Spitfire photo reconnaissance variants. This is one of Schotten's maps near the Anglo-Canadian invasion site at Annelles-sur-Mer. This is a Geology beach map, indicating location of outcrops of peat and shale on the beach that might bog down tanks and troops. Schotten's work proved to be invaluable and enabled the Allies to be successful on D-Day by highlighting treacherous conditions to avoid. Following D-Day, he remained in northern France to provide information and maps to source further water supplies, aggregates for construction, and provided assessments of terrain in connection with the rapid construction of airfields and military vehicle mobility. All of the top-secret work of Schotten and his colleagues contributed to the ultimate success of the Allied campaign. From west to east, the D-Day landing beaches: Utah Beach, the westernmost landing site assigned to the U.S. 4th Infantry Division. Omaha Beach. Located to the east of Utah, this was the responsibility of the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions. It was the most heavily defended and saw the fiercest fighting. Gold Beach. Situated between Omaha and Juneau, this was assigned to the British 50th Infantry Division. Juneau Beach. Located to the east of Gold, this was the landing site for the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division. Sword Beach, the easternmost landing site, assigned to the British 3rd Infantry. For any amphibious operation, an ability to predict the height and timing of high tides is crucial. The Army favored high tides, decreasing the amount of time soldiers would be targets as they crossed the exposed beaches. The Navy wanted a low tide so as to expose beach obstacles. Compromise was halfway. Not to leave out the Air Force, aviators wanted moonlight to navigate by and to let them see where to drop more than 13,000 paratroopers behind enemy lines. Let's move on to the topic of selecting locations for airfields. D-Day wasn't just about landing on beaches, it was about what came after. For example, you need airfields and fast to keep the air support going. But Normandy's terrain was not exactly ideal, so geology became super important. They had to consider everything, soil, drainage, you name it. And here's a detail you might not think of. Even tiny slopes could hinder airfield construction. So how did they solve this? They used the multiplex air photo method. Basically, they took aerial photos and turned them into super detailed maps, accurate down to 5 feet. This let them check out potential airfield sites for topographical and geological suitability. A fancy way of saying they could find the best spots for building. It was crucial for getting those planes in the air quickly. After D-Day, building airfields was a top priority. But the amount of clay in the ground turned out to be very important. Clay helps make runways solid, so the Americans, with more clay in their sector, could surface more of their airfields, about 75%. The British, with less clay, focused on surfacing about 50%. This difference in soil composition really influenced their construction plans. But here's another thing. They also needed materials for roads. They had to find quarries, and knowing what kind of rock was where was essential for getting the job done. The soil map for the Normandy invasion coastline is shown, and the white area which was selected as having the most promising potential for airfields is shown and traced in red. The map shows the position and orientation of British airfields in Normandy, constructed near the Gold Beach, Juneau Beach, and Sword Beach landing areas after the D-Day landing. Within weeks of D-Day, dozens of runways had been constructed, some with square mesh overlays. Bitumen was far more commonly used in the immediate post-D-Day period. It's estimated that bitumen-coated airfields made up around 70% to 80% of the temporary airstrips built by the Allies in that period, with the remainder likely being steel mesh or a combination of the two. Another critical issue was finding potable water for the troops. Main rivers had to be utilized, as well as drilling military boreholes in Normandy aquifers. The Jurassic limestone proved to be a good aquifer and not too deep. The water for the troops in Normandy was obtained largely from rivers and existing wells, supplemented by 33 new boreholes. Optimal geological conditions were good aquifers, no deeper than 105 meters, in good, clean carbonate rocks near rivers. The photo shows a water point on the River Seulles at Cruilly, which supplied 80,000 gallons per day. Quarries for sand and gravel were needed to build and repair roads, to aid in vehicular movement cross-country, as well as build stores for Operation Overlord. Areas with relatively flat and hard surfaces with quick drainage had to be developed. Inland areas from the Normandy landing beaches. These areas were largely for ammunition, base ammunition depots, and fuel, petrol, oil lubricants, stores, as well as hospitals, medical, and vehicle and equipment maintenance. Initial landing area where quarries which were limestone are shown in light blue. This was not excellent material, but it was used initially. Maps showing surface geology also had to be created for the full Allied invasion to places as far as Paris and beyond. These were known as going maps. Areas shown in red are excellent hard rock granites, sands, and gravels. Sand and gravel were needed to build and repair roads. Other areas are delineated as softish, very soft, and loose, indicating areas of potential trafficking problems. Geological aid was needed in determining location and position of Operation Pluto. Pipelines under the ocean. The Pluto secret pipeline mission used a popular Walt Disney character for its logo. Operation Pluto, a marvel of wartime engineering, involved laying pipelines under the English Channel to supply fuel to Allied forces after D-Day. Two primary routes were established: the shorter, approximately 30-mile Dungeness to Boulogne pipeline, nicknamed Operation Dumbo, and a longer 60-mile stretch from Shanklin on the Isle of Wight to Cherbourg. While the English Channel's narrowest point, Dover to Calais, is about 21 miles wide, these pipelines took different, strategically chosen routes. Geological surveys were crucial in determining the optimal locations for these underwater lifelines, ensuring their stability and effectiveness. The success of Operation Pluto was vital to the Allied advance. Imagine trying to liberate Europe without a reliable fuel supply. These pipelines, stretching dozens of miles across the seabed, provided a continuous flow of petrol, fueling tanks, trucks, and aircraft. They were a secret weapon playing a critical, though often overlooked, role in the Allied victory. Operation Pluto delivered 1 million gallons of petrol per day and 172 million gallons in total for the D-Day invasion and its aftermath. Geologists had to determine the nature of both the seafloor and riverbeds. Shown below are some interesting photos depicting the Operation Pluto, such as laying the pipeline, a conundrum being moved into position into a specially constructed dock in preparation for the winding on of the pipe, a section of the Pluto pipeline with external diameter of 4 inches, and a surviving section of the pipeline at Shanklin, Isle of Wight. Last but not least, beer delivery to troops. An English brewery donates a sizable amount of fresh beer for the troops fighting in Normandy, strapping kegs to the underwings of Spitfires. Flying at 12,000 feet chills the brew to perfection. Hope you enjoyed the amazing geological feats that were accomplished in preparation for the Normandy D-Day invasion. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by pressing the subscribe button below. We are planning to add many more presentations covering a wide variety of science, history, and other enriching subjects. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to make them, and we will do our best to respond. Again, thanks for watching, and please do subscribe.